Hello everyone! When we first arrived here, one of the things that struck us the most was the use of electric vehicles in the hectic streets of Beijing. This was one of the reasons why we have chosen to present about the Chinese electric car market. The reason behind why we chose Tesla specifically was the recent news regarding their upcoming factory near Shanghai. We begin our presentation with an introduction to the electric automobile industry and the market in China. After, we will discuss how the government influences the market and how do foreign firms start up in the Chinese market. We turn our focus to the Tesla case, how it changed the game, and finally, we discuss intellectual property rights. So let's first start with an industry analysis on the global electric vehicle market. In 2017, over 1 million electric cars were sold around the world, a new global record. The number of Teslas, Nissan Leafs, and other electric vehicles in circulation worldwide has now surpassed 3 million, an expansion of 50% from 2016. There were approximately 760,000 on American roads, along with a further 820,000 in Europe. China accounted for more than half of the 1 million of units sold globally in 2017. Chinese drivers have gotten hugely enthusiastic about the technology in recent years, and China could boast the largest fleet of electric vehicles in any country, a total of 1.23 million. These vehicles are starting to make inroads into China's highly competitive market, and they accounted for 2.3% share of it in 2017. In absolute terms, China's electrical vehicle sales performance is quite remarkable, yet the adoption rate represents only 2% on a national level. A limited number of large cities such as Beijing, Hangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Tianjin account for the majority of electrical vehicle sales. Nonetheless, China's positive market performance helped put the country in a strong, well-balanced position in the latest overall electrical vehicle index ratings. It was outperformed only by Norway in the Electrical Vehicle Index market score and reinforced its leading position, ahead of Japan, Germany, and the United States in the industry index analysis, the supply side of the equation. However, given today's electrical vehicle battery economics, leadership in electrical vehicle index scores comes at a price. China and Norway have some of the world's highest levels of spending on consumer and supply-side subsidies at the taxpayer's expense. Throughout the years, there have been a lot of changes in the global EV market. The following graphical representation shows the development of the EV index from 2014 to 2018. China is outperforming other countries on both market side. EV penetration rose from 0.3% to 2.2% because of the intense investment in charging infrastructure, and the industry side, higher EV and component share. France's EV market increased slowly, from 0.7% to 1.7% adoption rate. Gains on industry side driven by insourcing of EV components. Germany had quite equal though slow improvement on both market and industry side as a result of higher sales from 0.4% to 1.5% and vehicle production. Italy's market side performance decreased because of stagnant market. Missing industry focus on e-mobility slowed the progress on the supply side. Japan, on the other hand, lost ground on industry side because of falling market share in EV and component production. Slight improvement on the market side given slow sales development from 0.6% to 1.1%. Norway increased EV penetration from 11% to 32% in 4 years, thanks mainly to significant monetary and non-monetary incentives and larger choice of EV models. The US had few positive dynamics on both market and industry side, while EV model availability and market share from 0.7% to 1.2% rose slightly. Vehicle and component production share decreased. Norway stands largely alone in its mass market embrace of electric vehicles, so it provides a real-world picture of future EV sales proportions that developed markets could experience over the next 5 to 10 years. This exhibit shows the 4 stages of a disrupted trend. Having reached a critical mass of EVs, Norway is clearly ahead of other countries. The EV disruption is inevitable. Most other countries are still in the first stage, except for China and Sweden, which have already advanced to the second. Disruption is somewhat more clear, with EVs emerging as a validated model. In China, policy, not economics, is the main driver for electric vehicle growth. The largest socialist market economy is now the world's largest oil importer and emitter of greenhouse gases. To counter this, the country is dead set on electrified future. Policies and financial incentives for new energy vehicles, China designation for electric vehicles, are the most robust in the world. For nearly a decade, China's government has poured money into the EV industry, offering generous tax incentives and subsidies for car makers and consumers, building charging infrastructures across the country, and placing restrictions on the sales and use of gasoline cars. China has spent more than $15 billion to support EV sales, manufacturing, and charging infrastructure. And the cost of making EVs is falling rapidly. They're expected to be cheaper to produce than internal combustion engines by 2025. By that time, China may have an unassailable manufacturing edge when internal combustion engines are phased out around 2040 across Europe and other industrialized countries. When we talk about the EV revolution, we're really talking about China, and much less about the rest of the world. What happens in China in the next 10 years will probably happen in the US starting in 2030, but at that point, the Chinese battery industry will have significantly more experience in the mass manufacturing batteries than any US company. Now we turn our focus on the local Chinese market. In the US, some of the major players in the industry include Tesla, General Motors, and Nissan, amongst others. Tesla clearly dominates the US electric vehicle market. However, we see a different picture when it comes to China. Tesla is facing an increasingly fierce competition in the Chinese market. Some of Tesla's biggest local competitors are BAIC, BYD, and Chery, amongst many others. Most recently, Byton and the Shanghai-based NIO, nicknamed as the Tesla of China, have become very attractive to the local consumers and therefore pose a new threat to Tesla's market share in China. China's electrical vehicle firms have an edge on Tesla for four key reasons. First, several of the top EV car makers in China are state-owned with government backing. They have access to the largest domestic market in the world. The Chinese government's strategic policies are very pro all-electric vehicles. And four, they have better battery capability. More on the government's role on the industry as well as on the individual firms will be further explained by Elias.
But how does the government influence the market? The most influencing power that controls it is the government's subsidies on electric vehicles. Back in 2010, the Chinese government announced a program to provide incentives for electric vehicles for up to 60,000 yuan. This program was launched to leapfrog the industry and to make it more attractive for customers to choose electric vehicles. The current problems with pollution and traffic in China haven't passed by anyone without being noticed, and this is one way of solving it. Though the incentive of subsidies isn't the only thing China has been using to accelerate the amount of electric vehicles being sold. In Beijing and Shanghai, the number of vehicles are being regulated by a specific system for issuing vehicle licenses. Each month, an amount of approximately 3,000 licenses are being issued, and as many as 3 million applications might be received. After a selection process has been transacted, the remainder of the licenses is put into a lottery pool, and the only thing to rely on is luck. In June 2018, the possibility of getting a vehicle license in Beijing was 1 in 2031. Not the best odds. However, for electric vehicles, buyers are exempt from this process and assured of receiving a license. Other than these advantages, electric vehicles are also granted access to separate high-speed and carpooling lanes on highways, which is attractive for many commuters. These different ways of influencing the market is a great example of how institutions are able to manipulate the decision-making process of individuals. In the beginning of 2018, the notorious trade war between the United States of America and China began. President Donald Trump began with raised tariffs on imports from China, declaring that it was a response to the unfair trade practices said to be performed by China throughout the years. Not so surprising, China followed and imposed a tariff on 128 products from the US, for example cars, aluminum, and steel piping, amongst others. In Tesla's case, this made their export market to China a lot less favorable, as the import tariffs on their vehicles are now around 40% compared with 50% on other vehicles imported to China. As the global sales of electric vehicles surpassed 1 million for the first time in 2017, and China accounted for 50% of those, implies that the market is a huge opportunity for electric vehicle makers and specifically Tesla. Also, the tariffs were already high before the trade war on imported vehicles, but now Tesla is even more eager to begin with their production in China, avoiding the hefty tariffs. So how does foreign firms usually start up in the Chinese market? When entering the Chinese competitive market, there's a few things crucial to if it's going to be a smooth or bumpy ride. The most important thing is to choose a location carefully. Until recent years, the most popular area to establish your presence has been the Tier 1 cities, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shanghai. These cities offer highly populated areas with a large middle class representation and income levels way above the national average. These cities are also the most mature markets when looking at consumer behavior, and therefore also the most suitable environment for testing the reactions of the market. Even though that these Tier 1 cities offer the lowest risk of market entry, the downside is unfortunately that you face high startup and operational costs together with strong competition. Recent indicators shows that the economic growth and rising incomes in China's Tier 2 cities such as Shenzhen, Hangzhou, and the Tianjin have made them much more attractive for foreign companies. Not only do the Tier 2 cities offer lower setup costs and operational costs, but the increase in consumer spending power is creating a rapid growth in demand for foreign goods. In the long-term decision-making, foreign companies can gain first-mover advantage in these cities with lower local competition. What is also noticeable is that the Tier 2 cities are closely located to the Tier 1 cities and are therefore easily connected logistically. In Tesla's case, they have already chosen to make their market entry in Shanghai, as they purchased a land site 3 months ago to be used for the Gigafactory 3. The deal signed with local authorities is to build a factory which shall produce 500,000 cars annually. But location isn't everything. The second most important thing is to carefully choose which way to establish your presence in China. Basically, there are 3 different forms of establishment in China for foreign companies: wholly foreign-owned enterprise, joint venture, or a simpler representative office. Until today, the most popular pick of these 3 have been the joint venture because of the low risk but also several operational advantages. Although the WFOE is becoming more popular, and therefore we have chosen to focus on how Tesla is entering the Chinese market, which Lauren will tell you more about.
Tesla began with a group of engineers who wanted to prove that people did not have to compromise driving electric. Therefore, the core business revolves around all-electric cars as well as scalable clean energy generation. Ranked several times among the world's most innovative companies, Tesla seeks to inspire innovation and ethical values through development of peak technology and aims at reducing negative impacts on the environment. This is indeed in line with their vision of creating the most compelling car company of the 21st century by driving the world's transition to electric vehicles and accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. So the question remains, why do we care about Tesla in regards to the automobile industry specifically in China? Is it so different from any other foreign firm entering the Chinese market? The answer to that question is yes. Tesla first entered China through imports in 2013 and established a sales network through cooperation with dealers. The reason behind this was apparent. Then, Chinese government stipulated that foreign automakers would not set up wholly owned companies. Any other possible way of entering the Chinese market faced a high possibility of technology leakage. But China has played an important role in today's vehicle market. At the moment, China is the world's largest electrical car market, while it shows trends of consumers purchasing these electric cars for the very first time. This pressured Tesla to outperform its foes and earn its foothold in the world's biggest market. In 2018, Tesla is the first foreign electronic automobile maker that enters the Chinese market through a wholly owned subsidiary by opening a new gigafactory in Shanghai. So why did China welcome this new set of rules in its own territory? Well, among many political and economic reasons, because of innovation and environment. One of the main visions in the National Made in China 2025 plan lays the objective of China becoming self-sufficient in several technological industries, including the new energy vehicles. China aims to become a world leader in tech power, which gives businesses like Tesla an optimal environment to develop the innovation-oriented business models. Moreover, due to pollution levels, the government has been required to encourage local firms as well as foreign investors to take a leading role in environmentally friendly solutions. The great aggressive push the government has put towards renewable transportation benefits the low carbon emission car producers and makes the business environment for Tesla more welcoming than ever. What's important here is that the whole technology of Tesla is kept a secret. Its intellectual property is not in any way violated, and it operates as it would in the country of origin, but now has a market potential of producing 500,000 more electric cars. Without the technology leakage risk, Tesla now can unfold its plan in China completely. But why is this even a problem? As we already mentioned, the risk of technology leakage is present in joint ventures. China's treatment of intellectual property rights varies among the words serious concern, problems, challenges, weakness, and insufficiency. First off, let's define the intellectual property rights. It is basically refers to patent, trademark, and copyright. Legally, IP is protected by several laws which are in place and in accordance with international standards. However, practically 90% of software, music, movies, and computer games sold in China are pirated, and IPR laws are not enforced. These laws, however, have been amended several times since they were enacted, the latest amendment of Chinese trademark law being in 2014. This shows that IPR issues are a rising concern for the government and they're making progress. Nevertheless, there is still room for improvement. Intellectual property rights holders face not only a complex and uncertain enforcement environment, but also pressure to transfer intellectual property rights to enterprises in China through a number of government policies and practices. A growing concern is the continuing registration of trademarks in bad faith. Although China has taken some steps to address this problem, US companies across industry sectors continue to face Chinese applicants registering their marks and holding them for ransom or seeking to establish a business building off of US companies' global reputation. There is a plausible increase in patent application filings in China through the Paris Convention filings. Only for 2015, the number of patent filings hit 1 million, while 43% of global patent applications are received by China's intellectual property offices. Laws are quite solid when it comes to IPR protection. However, enforcement proves to be a barrier. China has set up special IP courts to deal with patent and complicated trademark infringement cases in three major cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. These courts handled cases for both local and foreign firms. With 20 highly experienced judges in these IP special courts, each one of them must have more than 10 years working experience in dealing with IP issues. Therefore, the decisions rendered by these judges in the IP special courts should be hopefully reasonable and fair. So how can a foreign firm protect its IPR in China? One of the solutions might be setting up wholly foreign-owned company where rather than entering through a joint venture, which provides more control over who has access to the technology and the know-how. Breaking the manufacturing process into several discrete operations that are located in different facilities can prevent any single group of employees from seeing the whole process. Another good way to prevent technology leakage is to manufacture more components, where much of the technology is contained in-house rather than outsourced. However, this option becomes costly. One of China's goals is to change the image from a made in China to a designed or created in China market, with the government pushing for more innovation in sectors such as automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and technology. As more and more Chinese companies become patent holders, they will then have a vested interest in protecting their technology, just like their international counterparts. More than any other factor, this trend will drive the future of IPR protection in China.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed our presentation.